public comments for the public hearing or the meeting.
Okay. So I can call us the.
You're online. You're good to go.
All right, it is 6:15. I'm going to call us to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have four board members present this evening. Meredith is, we think, out of the country maybe, so she's not here tonight. We need to first adopt the meeting agenda, so I will take a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
I move we approve the meeting agenda.
Thank you, Diana. Is there a second? Thank you, Jack. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, our first item of business is a oath of office for our interim superintendent, Dr. Carl Bruner. So I think we have to stand up and do this. Should I bring the microphone? Is that what we do? Yeah, okay. Do you want to stand out here? Okay. I think you need to hold your hand up and repeat after me. I, Dr. Carl Bruner, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Washington, and will faithfully perform the duties of superintendent of Anacortes School District Number 103 in the County of Skagit, State of Washington, according to the best of my ability. Effective July 1st, 2020. Why does it say, 2025? Great. I think that's it. So congratulations. You're official. So just I sign this, right? Oh, yeah. Okay. Great. All right. It's official. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, so we have no public comments, and for our, then we still have to open the hearing, right, Nikki, even if we have nobody to speak?
Yes, there's the sheet.
Oh, great, okay. So the board will now hold a public hearing on the 2024-25 budget. 25-26 budget. The public hearing is now open for public comments. Is there's anyone to sign up to speak? There was nobody. So hearing none or having heard from no speakers, the public hearing is now closed. We will now move to superintendent comments.
Brian Fraser?
Yeah, so we're not moving to superintendent comments. Sorry, Brian. This is sorry. So we're actually going to hear from you about the, yeah.
You should be on. It's on. It's on.
It's on.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Brian Fraser. I am the Executive Director of Finance and Operations for the Anacortes School District. And I'm here today to walk you through a report on the 25-26 budget, which is up for adoption tonight after the public hearing in accordance with the law and in an effort to be transparent and faithful to the public. So we'll start with some basics about school funding. There are 5 independent funds. They operate and balance independently. You can see their purposes up there. The main fund and the focus of the bulk of the presentation today will be the general fund. That's the one that can do everything. The others are specific to certain things. As you see, the transportation vehicle fund is for the purchase of school buses and other vehicles as of next month for student transportation. You'll see the purposes there. I won't read them out for you. Some basics about the general fund specifically. It can do anything. It's the only fund that can cover our human costs, and those are the bulk of the budgets. We're in the human business. We're helping humans grow. We need humans to do that, and that's the general fund. It is the majority of it comes from the state, 73% of the revenue, and it's allocated on per pupil model. So however many students you have, the student number generates a certain amount of revenue. Here are some other definitions of things that might come up during the conversation. I'll leave the slide up for a moment, but I won't read that for everyone. The presentation is available on the website if anybody's watching at home and wants to go back and look at any of these definitions as we're going. One of the things that has been a talking point lately, and I know in districts across the state, including Anacortes, was the material supplies and operating costs. That's the MSOCs, so that will come up tonight. You see the difference between full-time equivalent and headcount there. All right, so this is a summary of the 5 funds for the Anacortes School District that are in the budget for 25-26. The bottom line there is the ending fund balance. Second from the bottom is the projected beginning fund balance, and you'll see the revenue expenditure, the overall change to each of the fund balances. The next few slides will walk us through the 4 other funds, not the general fund, and then we'll get into more specifics about the general fund. So the Capital Projects Fund is primarily funded by our tech and capital levy. You see the amount coming in there. The $800,000 for state grants is in there as a contingency. We may have state grants, we may not. You'll see there's a contingency match in the expenditures. A large bulk of the revenue that comes in is transferred to the general fund for related expenses for technology. Part of the RCW about these funds is that they have to go through the general fund, but then if they're capital eligible, they can be transferred after the fact. So that's the majority of the activity in the capital projects funds for the 25-26 school year. There is some equipment purchase for technology and some capital improvements, including energy upgrades and maintenance to the buildings. ASB is the kids funds. Remember the acronym CARS that was on one of those first slides: cultural, athletic, recreational, and social. They are public funds, but the kids determine how and when they bring them in, what they do with them, and they're broken up between athletics, general student body, classes, which are freshman, sophomore, junior, not actual courses, clubs, and then private monies that can be held for a specific purpose based on a specific donation. The debt service fund simply is a pass-through of money coming in from our levy collection and bond sales and going out to fulfill our obligations with our loans and bonds. And the Transportation Vehicle Fund, that one up until just now was for only large yellow buses. We can now purchase vans for student transportation. So you see the value comes in from the depreciation that's calculated by OSPI on the depreciation of our vehicles. And then we purchase new vehicles based on that depreciation when they run off their useful life cycle. The idea is that another one is funded by the depreciation schedule, and we can keep a fleet of well-running vehicles. So this one has a large purchase when you compare to the revenue. That's because if the buses are delayed, they go into the next year's budget, and they often are. It can sometimes take years to get a bus that you order, and if you don't budget for it to be in that next year, you may end up having to do a budget adjustment or overspending your budget by an entire bus, which is a couple $100,000, which obviously we're not going to do, so we budget accordingly. So that brings us back to the summary of those 4 funds. You'll see the ASB has a bit of a drawdown. That is some contingency that's built in there. The capital projects and the transportation vehicle also are being drawn down, and that again is part of the contingency in case we need those expenditures. And the bottom line is still a positive fund balance for all of the funds. I'll pause there for any questions from the board before I move on to the more detailed report about the general fund.
I don't think we have any questions, but just for the good of the folks, we had a good amount of time to discuss this in depth at our recent board retreat. So thank you, Brian.
Okay. So this is some historical context to just the general fund, and you'll see over time the revenues in blue, the expenditures in orange. They both have gone up over time, even though enrollment's declining, inflation has been going up, and so therefore have our costs, and the state has tried to match those increases with increases to the budget as it's allocated to schools. This shows a year-by-year comparison of the change. If we go back to this graph, you'll see very small differences. They look small because the values are high in this graph, but you'll see in 1920, for example, the revenue was over expenditures, and in 21-22, the revenue was under expenditures. And this shows those differences in more detail. So the fund balance was fairly high in 2016, 2017, and so there was what I read as an intentional drawdown and some spending in the fund balance for 17-18, and then status quo. Some good increases in COVID, and then a couple of years where we had some pretty significant decreases to the fund balance. When I look at this, it's easy to focus on, wow, those couple of years where there was a major drawdown to the fund balance. But what I think the real story is the difference between 22-23 and 23-24, because that's a heavy lift to shift a budget by $2 million. And you know, despite the fact that 24-25 is estimated to be revenues under expenditures by about $300,000, the difference between, you know, what we would have to make up to come to a balanced budget from that into 25-26 is very different from the heavy lift that already happened. And I want to point that out and highlight that you know, there are still some differences in the fund balance. We are still drawing it down this year, but the majority of the work to balance the budget looks like it has been completed. That's not to say that everything is comfortable. It's just to say that some of that hard work has been done. So this shows the fund balance in value over time. And you can see where it was going back to 16-17 and where it's projected to be at the end of the budget that is being proposed tonight. So that ending value of $755,356 for the end of 25-26 is the budget we're talking about tonight.
Brian, if I could just ask you for a quick question, just to help refresh us and anybody who may be watching, can you help remind us what sort of expenditures the fund balance is designed to be able to absorb and why it's important for us to have one?
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent question. The way that the state funds schools leads to a very predictable pattern, and I'm actually going to skip ahead a little bit to show what we expect that pattern to be. And this is very typical of what a school district funding, you know, a bank ending fund balance would look like. In September, for example, we get about 8.5% of our apportionment from the state, but we have a lot of startup costs that are rolling in, so our fund balance will go down. In October, we have a levy collection. That only happens twice a year, so 15% of our budget comes in those increments. 8 and 7% of our budget comes in those 2 months. So the state reduces their level of funding to us in October, and they do it again in May and June. You see it ticks up in July and August, and that's because 22.5% of the funding from the state, which again is our most major revenue source, comes in those months. And that's because the state fiscal deadline is June 30th. So they withhold a bunch of money that would go to schools to get their bottom line up to the end of their deadline and then pay us at the end, which is their next fiscal year. So with the fund balance starting about where it is, about $686,000, you'll see in this graph in June we get to virtually nothing. And this pattern is enforced by the way that the state allocates their funding month to month. we can do some to even it out. We can hold expenditures, and we're doing that. So, for example, we have an insurance bill that they might charge us for in September. We've worked with them, and they're going to get it in October after our levy collection comes in, because that's a significant expense that we just can't afford in September. And that's because of the way that the state funding allocation model works. Does that help answer your question, Jack?
Really good refresher on why the fund balance ebbs and flows throughout the school year. Thank you. Could you add a little bit more color, though, as far as why it's so important that we maintain it at some minimum level? What kinds of things have you historically seen the fund balance need to be drawn upon other than survival? What sort of things is the fund balance usually used to cover?
Yes. So lower than about a 4% fund balance, districts will have financial challenges. There'll be months where you might have to take a loan from the county or a loan from yourself from your own fund. So that's one challenge, is you simply run out of money in the general fund. So 4% is about the threshold for being able to make payroll without any special activities throughout the year. If something else comes up, and a roof collapses or a sinkhole opens, those will all be general fund expenses. If we have lots of staff go out on leaves, if we have a baby boom in Anacortes and some of our staff goes out, that's a cost. We want those folks to be home with their kids when they're born. But that's an extra cost then that we incur in covering that staffing cost while that person's out on leave. And the same could be true if there was an accident and there's people going out on L&I. Those are costs that we have to incur. So, if we're down to our last penny in June and we have 3 people going out, then that's a cost that the fund balance would be there to incur. So that's another reason that it's important. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you for that explanation. I got the impression throughout the spring as we were doing some of this that there may have been an impression from folks in the community that we were just trying to hold on to money so that we could look at it and admire it, and that's really not the case. This fund balance is very important for very, very important reasons that you've identified. By my math, it looks like we're starting the year at about 1.3%, which in the context of what you just described to us really ought to put that in context for everybody in the community, that we're not holding on to or hiding or hoarding money. It has been budgeted down to the below what we would like it to be. So I just want to make sure that anybody that's watching or listening understands that that's where we're at, and there's not more money that we're holding on to.
Correct. We don't have a fund balance just for the sake of having a fund balance, and if we did, you'll see historically there in 2017-18, again, I wasn't here for that, but I would assume that somebody looked at that and said, we've got money in the bank we can spend on kids. And that's what happened. And you're right, about 1.36% is the estimated starting point for this school year, so we will have some challenges. We do expect to make payroll every month. We will prioritize some of our spending and some of our bills, but we have ways to make it through, and those systems and structures are set up and ready to go. And by the end of the 25-26 school year, it's a very moderate increase, up to about 1.47%. So this will not be our most challenging year, but the challenge is not over. So this we already touched on some. This is the typical traditional pattern you see in school districts that have levies, and the vast majority do because we don't typically survive well without them. So you see the spikes in the fund balance when the levy funding comes in, and them being drawn down over time until July and August, where we get a little bit more of our state funding in, and we anticipate ending the school year slightly higher next year than we will end this year. Again, I would draw your attention to the values in September, in January and February, and again in June. So again, we have plans to get through, but things will be tight. So here's a summary of the source of our revenues. You'll see that about 73% of it comes from state funding. There's a portion that comes from federal special purpose funding. Those are things like our Title I that's for disadvantaged youth, SPED. A lot of our special education funding comes from the federal government. We get food service money coming from the federal government, but the vast majority of it comes from the state. We also have a very supportive community, and I want to take a moment to give a shout out to those community members that do support the district. That really matters, and it really enhances the student experience. And you'll see that show up in the local non-tax line there. That's quite significant support directly to our students, so we appreciate that. We also have community partners like the county and the ESD, and you'll see that in the other agencies there. We have some very supportive partnerships in both with our community members and our community partners, so that's an important part of the budget. This shows our expenditures in a similar way. So you'll see again that over 86% of our expenditures are in humans, in people, in payroll, and that's our students do benefit from our insurance payments, but the biggest benefit to them and their experience and their learning comes from the people that we have around them. So in the human business, I would expect our biggest expense to be that human capital. And again, it makes the most difference for the kids. But at the same time, there's nothing really left in that other bucket of stuff, those MSOCs, that we cannot do anymore. That's down to our utility payments and our insurance, essentially. Things, not a lot in there that we have discretion over. So we have to wonder how sustainable it is to have those fixed costs that we're unable to cover because they're not being covered by the state. But we don't have a lot of discretion in that area. I'll go back to this one because it did cut out to give you guys an extra moment to just look at it. And then this shows what we were just talking about, that over 86% of the total cost in the budget of the general fund is those salaries and benefits. That said, I know that there have been some challenges and that there have been some reductions over time. So when I looked at our enrollment, this is the way that I wanted to highlight that. The lower those bars go, the better, because that's a ratio of how many students we have per staff member. So if we have 9.25 students per staff member, or 8.9 students per staff member. It's a small difference, but those numbers are still getting smaller, and what that shows is that the district has done what they promised to do and keep those cuts as far away from kids as possible. That we're still staffing, staffing matches our enrollment, and that as enrollment has gone down, so too has our staffing, and that ratio of student to staff. You'll see the total in blue, the certificated staff, that's our teachers, counselors, in orange, and the classified staff in green is the color there. But all of those values are trending down over time, which is a good thing. So the farther out from a point in time we get, the more assumptions we make, and the less accurate those guesses get. But we still do a 4-year projection, and here are some of the assumptions that we've made in that we are passing the levy, that enrollment continues to decline, and we continue to match that with our staffing. And it does not take into account any guesses of what might happen in the state legislature. They had an opportunity to act in their last biennial session. We're coming into a short session, and then we have another long session with some extra caveats for schools in it coming. I'm not going to guess what they may or may not do. Same with the federal funding. This holds those levels steady. So as our enrollment declines, those values might decline some, but as inflation goes up, they might go up some, or things may change at the federal level. So this just says those are going to remain steady over time. And what we see is that we can essentially make a moderate increase to the fund balance over time, and this is a monetary value. If you were to look at the percentage of expenditures that the fund balance is, which is what the board policy asks for, is 4% fund balance of the expenditures of that budget. It really doesn't change all that much, because as the fund balance increases incrementally, so too do our expenditures. So in this graph, that fund balance gets up to about 1.86% at the end of 4 years. So still low and still challenging, and barring any changes at the state, we may need to make some changes locally to, if we want that value to increase more over time. I'll now open it up for the board discussion and questions.
Other questions from the board?
I think it's retreat.
All right, we have no other questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm fumbling the hearing also because I skipped right over your presentation, Brian, but thank you for being here. Just want to reiterate, the board had a really lengthy session on this and saw the presentation at our retreat and was able to have a lot of deep discussion about it. And just appreciate Brian coming on board and getting up to speed so quickly and being ready for this in a very, very fast period of time. So thank you, Brian. I'll just ask one more time if there's anyone who would like to make comment in the public hearing. And with no one, then this time I actually will close the public hearing. Great. All right, let me go back to my agenda. Awesome. So now we're going to move to superintendent comments.
Great. So we are busy, as I know you're all aware, preparing for the start of school. And in looking at my calendar prior to this meeting, I realized that it is one day less than 2 weeks away. So it is literally right around the corner. In spite of what I know have been painful reductions, staff across all of our departments have really been pulling together throughout the summer to ensure that everything is ready for students. And if you walk around our schools, when you walk around our schools, it is readily apparent that that work's been happening. I'd like to especially acknowledge the efforts of our year-round staff, including the district office team, school custodians, and maintenance staff. While the majority of our staff are school year and are gone during the summer, those groups have been hard at work, as they always remain each summer, and you can begin to see evidence of what they've been up to. So I feel very grateful to those groups. I want to remind the board and also families to check out our back to school guide, which is available on our website, and it provides, thanks to Nikki Tesh, just a host of information that helps us all get prepared for this school year. Additionally, I'd like to remind all families to complete the annual update using Skyward Family Access. That update is really essential for us because what it does is it updates contact and emergency info. It confirms student enrollment for the upcoming school year, which, as Brian mentioned, is connected to our largest amount, our largest percentage of funding annually, and completing required district forms, including the child nutrition eligibility and education benefit application, really allows students to be in just where they need to be when school begins. So we would encourage all families to complete those forms ASAP. So in terms of what's happening with students and the schedules for the days ahead, today we welcome students for Anacortes High School Seahawk Startup and Anacortes Middle School 6th grade web orientation. And if you have not been to a 6th grade web orientation recently, it is something not to be missed. I have the advantage of having my office right above the entrance to the middle school, and my window was wide open this morning, so I was able to listen to kids coming in for 6th grade orientation. Then Dr. Mitchell Muma and I had an opportunity to go and hang out at the middle school gym for about 45 minutes as we saw the staff and web student leaders who are in 7th and 8th grade work with all of the 6th grade incoming students. And it was a tremendous delight. We all appreciate the opportunity to plan for the following school year in relative calm and silence during the summer. But that, to be honest with you, gets old after a while, and there is no replacement to having schools come alive again with students. That's why we're all here. That's why we know you are all here. And I think that the majority of you have students who will be returning to schools, so perhaps your family will get a little more quiet as our schools begin to take some of the pressure off. And we're we're just very excited. Tomorrow, which is Friday, August 22nd, Anacortes High School Freshman Link Crew orientation is happening. And that starts at at 8 a.m. and extends to 12 noon. And the high school is asking that students bring a backpack for textbooks. And I've seen a lot of high school 9th grade link orientations. And while 9th graders are not quite as animated as 6th graders, it's just delightful to see them back as well. And we will be there enjoying watching them tomorrow. So that's for students. On Tuesday, August 26th, the high school is hosting a 9th grade family night from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the Anacortes High School Commons. On Thursday of that week, August 28th, the middle school is hosting a 7th and 8th grade Hawk startup at Anacortes Middle School, starting at 1 p.m., and that will include tours and fee payment opportunities. Finally, all of our elementary schools are hosting meet and greets for families on that same day, Thursday, August 28th, from 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. So we are looking forward to welcoming students and families back for an exciting, successful, and exciting school year starting September 3rd. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. We will continue then with board comments. Do we have any board members that have comments this evening?
Well, I'll just say, I'm glad you mentioned, I get to spend in the little booth where they hand out the textbooks and see the excitement with kids. It's the only time that sometimes librarians celebrate when they don't have as many books because they have things online or excited about the new curriculum with different things. But we still talk about their reading assignments and hear about their summer, and it's really fun. So looking forward to the freshman one tomorrow because that one usually comes with costumes and themes. So that'll be fun. Well, I tell them all to come talk to their librarian and come to our creative writing group. It's fun. But I also I somehow was on a list that someone reached out to. Our broadcast club was making an ad this summer and invited me to come, be in a shot for them somewhere. And I've had little reminders of all of the wonderful things, but as you said, can't wait to hear all the noise in the hallways when we visit. And looking forward to kick off on Monday as well with the staff that I think some of us are going to be at. So just looking forward to it. And officially, even though I know it was July 1st, thank you and welcome.
Great. And also just want to piggyback on what Diana said and looking forward to bringing back an all-staff welcome this year for all the staff to join together on the first day back on Monday morning. So looking forward to that. Great. All right. We are going to then move into our new business. And so we're going to first look again one more time at the budget and vote, and then we'll move into policy updates. So Brian, if you want to say anything further about the Resolution 1005, the adoption of the budget, and then the F-195 is just below that as an FYI.
Yes, thank you. So in adherence to the law and good faith of the public, the budget hearing that happened tonight was advertised twice on August 7th and August 14th in the Anacortes American. The public hearing has been held, and I would like to introduce Resolution number 1005, adoption of the 2025-26 budget. It's the budget that we just heard about and the budget that is posted again, as you mentioned, here in the board agenda and on the website.
Great, thank you. Any questions? And if not, I'll take a motion to approve Resolution 1005, adoption of the 25-26 budget.
Thank you very much for the work you've done on this, especially coming in late, and the rest of your team that I know has been supporting you in that, so thanks. Let's move to approve resolution number 1005.
Thank you, Jack. Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Thank you, Heather. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. And then Resolution 1006, Brian, authorization to invest funds.
Yes, so the funds, when we are not needing them and not using them, when we do have a fund balance, can be invested through the Skagit County Investment Pool, where they'll earn interest for us. And this resolution simply gives authority to me and to Dr. Bruner to move those funds in and out of those investment accounts. It's retroactive to July 1st, which is when we both joined the district. And that's the purpose of this very procedural board resolution.
Thank you. Any questions? Or I will take a motion to approve Resolution 1006.
I move we approve Resolution 1006.
Thank you, Diana. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jack. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Brian. I believe Nikki is going to speak to the policy updates. Nikki's been busy continuing to update our policies, which we are very appreciative of.
Good evening, board. I have tonight for you policy first reads. You'll see quite a few. I did put them in order on the agenda to make it a little bit easier as we guide through it. These are the policies that are for review tonight. You'll see some of them are first read, and there's two that are up for a vote. The items that are up for a vote are items 10G and 10K. WASDA went and did something nice for us, which means we have to change all of our policies because they changed the classifications of how they summarize them. So at the bottom of every policy, you'll see what WASDA deems each policy. So critical, which was formerly essential, so our policies should say critical. Important, formally encouraged, and discretionary, which was unchanged. But I really liked this graphic to be able to display exactly what this means and give us definitions for the categories within our policy book. It gives clarification. All right, so the first one on the agenda is our first read for tonight. The purpose of this one is to conduct the oath of office, and it aligns with the updates are in response to House Bill 1296. 1296 had quite a few changes that impacted a lot of our policies, so you'll see that throughout the presentation tonight. It was just basically aligning this policy with state law and making sure that it was correct, especially since we have an election in November. Do you want me to just proceed until we get to a vote?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, unless feel free if the board has questions as you go, but you can just keep going. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. Next is policy 1310, and this is a policy after my own heart because this is about what I'm doing, about policy adoption manuals and administrative procedures. So I figured while I'm cleaning up the policies, I might as well clean up the policies that dictates the policies. It sets the process and interpretation. Again, these updates are in response to House Bill 1296. And basically there was just a really small addition in regards to the policy interpretation section as defined by RCW 28A 150-203. All right, policy 2420 and then 2420P, which is the procedure that goes with it. The procedure is just an FYI tonight. This requires the district to keep parents informed of student progress through grade reports, conferences, and test results. Teachers must share learning goals each term, and attendance can affect grades only if stated in advance. The superintendent oversees the reporting system with students able to appeal grading concerns. Again, this is a revision that is an update in response to House Bill 1296. And this revision basically ensures that parents are informed in the correct way in alignment with state law. Any questions? All right, the next one is policy 3143, notification and dissemination of information about student offenses and notification of threats of violence or harm. Basically, this is a policy to keep our kiddos safe. And it sets the procedures about how we notify staff, students, and parents, and how we protect sensitive information with families. And then there's legal protections for staff who act in good faith. These revisions are in response to House Bill 1296. And it requires the district to receive and act on notices of student offenses from law enforcement, courts, and other agencies. And it guides principals and the superintendent in sharing offense information with staff as needed for supervision, safety, or student support.
Thanks, Nikki. Just want to especially because this one's got a lot of change to it, just want to reiterate that this comes from WASDA model policy and that we are following what WASDA's guiding us around how to be in compliance with state law.
Yeah, this policy was also needing an update. It hadn't been reviewed in quite some time by WASDA, and so there was a lot of changes into the law over the years throughout the policy, so it just needed a good scrub. 1999.
Yeah, with respect to this policy, I would encourage community members, parents, families, caretakers to give this policy a read, be familiar with it. I have a sense that many of those people I just listed will have different expectations for what they are notified about and when than what this legislation and WASDA recommendation actually call for. So I think it would be worth our community, parents and family members taking a look at this policy.
Great, and just want to reiterate, our goal with policies is always to be in compliance with state law, and policies go through legal before they come to us so that we make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, and again, this policy, I failed to go to the next slide. It protects sensitive information from public disclosure. So if you do a public records request, it allows us to, follow the state laws in relation to FERPA and other legalities as allowed. All right, you saw this policy in February of this year, and I mentioned then it would be a repeater, and we might actually even see it again. This is policy 3210, non-discrimination. The purpose of it is to ensure a safe, equitable, and inclusive learning environment by prohibiting discrimination and harassment based on protected status. Again, this is in response to House Bill 1296. The major changes of this revision include the definition. They added a few words into the definition of the non-discrimination statement, including ethnicity, homelessness, immigration or citizen status, neurodivergence, and this information will also be updated in our district-wide family and student handbook as required.
Thank you, Nikki. So this is a vote. Wanted to see if there's any questions, and if not, I will take a motion to approve the changes to policy 3210, non-discrimination.
I move we approve the changes to policy 3210, non-discrimination.
Thank you, Diana. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Heather. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. 4-0.
Got it. All right, the next policy is a first read. It's policy 3226 and the corresponding procedure 3226, interviews and interrogations of students on school premises. Basically, the purpose of this policy is to minimize interruptions of instruction for interviews and interrogations of students on school grounds. There are a few exceptions that exist under limited circumstances where on-site questioning is necessary, but if you review the policy, they are very limited, but they are identified. The revisions are in response, again, to House Bill 1296. And the revisions throughout the policy kind of identify the different places that it should ideally occur. The agency's locations, such as law enforcement, the Department of Child and Youth, Youth Families, is that it? And then county health, as well as the student home. And school premises are discouraged as an interview location throughout this policy and procedure. All right, policy 3421, child abuse and neglect. This is a first read. The purpose is to protect the children that attend our public schools. If there's any, and that we promptly report any suspected child abuse or neglect of anyone under the age of 18, so that authorities can investigate and staff are protected by law when reporting in good faith. These updates are in response to House Bill 1296. You'll notice throughout the policy that the definition of child abuse and neglect has been updated throughout the policy, so it's a little bit clearer of a definition throughout the policy and procedure. Yeah, that's it. Next up, we have policy 4060 and the corresponding procedure 4060P, distribution of information. I noticed that this one was incorrect when we added our online Anacortes community bulletin board, and it just so happened to be an update that we needed to make in response to House Bill 1296. So basically, the purpose of this policy is that it allows us to share information about social, recreational, and educational opportunities from nonprofit or governmental organizations with students and families, and that the distribution won't interfere with the educational process, and that all materials must meet the established standards in accordance with district procedures, and now they are. Most changes are being made to the procedure, but if I'm going to look at the procedure, I'm going to update the policy as well. And you'll see that the procedure has quite a few edits in regards to the Anacortes Community Connect, because that is our online bulletin board that is sent out to all families in every newsletter to let them know what's happening in our area. We're getting towards the end. Thank you for keeping your eyes open. All right, next up is policy 5010 and the corresponding procedure 5010P. This is up for a vote tonight. It's policy non-discrimination and affirmative action. The purpose of this one, the purpose, is to put the district in compliance with non-discrimination laws. So just like that non-discrimination policy we had earlier, it adds the definition, ethnicity, homeless, immigration, citizen status, or neurodivergence. It is in response to House Bill 1296 and will be updated in our district-wide family and student handbook.
Thank you. So this one's a vote, so we can take questions or a motion to approve policy 5010, non-discrimination and affirmative action.
I move we approve the changes and updates to policy 510, 510P, non-discrimination and affirmative action.
I'd second that.
Thank you, Diana and Heather. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. That passed, and so we will go on to our last few first reads.
All right, this one is information regarding policy 6220 and its corresponding procedure 6220P, as well as the form that accompanies it, 6220F1. And this is in regards to bid or request for proposal requirements. This establishes standards and procedures for procurement and contracting to ensure that the district uses resources efficiently and responsibly, complies with state law and federal law, maintains standardized and well-documented purchasing practices, and encourages participation with women and minority-owned businesses. And you can kind of see how it's weaved throughout the policy document, how these type of things are incorporated into it. The revisions include small repairs and improvements that are less than $75,000 that can proceed without bids. And if it's greater than $100,000, that they follow the formal bidding process unless they are using the small works roster that we approved a little bit earlier this year. So now we have things aligning. It's all happening. Construction bids must encourage women and minority-owned businesses participation. And I want to be clear on this one. This is just adding that verbiage into that section. So it's not just saying women can bid on construction projects, but I'm sorry if it sounds that way. Interlocal agreements may be used if procurement specifications, cost, and federal compliance are verified, which is a really, really good addition to have in this policy. And self-certification thresholds allow simplified procurement for low-risk audits.
Nikki,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
explained that pretty well in the information that we have.
Yeah.
But can you explain to the public just a little bit what the Small Works Project
The small works
roster
roster.
is?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the small works roster we approved a little bit earlier this year. We use the municipal research. Yep. We use the municipal MRSC, and we are part of like a consortium that uses the small works roster. And basically what it does is people are added to the small works roster for public works projects, and if they're on this, they're like approved list of vendors that are allowed to do public and governmental projects. So if they're on this list, they're already fully vetted. So it makes it a little bit easier for government agencies to be able to hire and go through the process. It's a benefit to us.
Thank you.
Did I get it all, Brian? I did it. that background in public works helped me out there. All right, the last one. And then this one is policy 6610, video surveillance. The purpose of this one is to authorize video surveillance on district property to ensure safety, protect property, and support disciplinary actions while limiting access and complying with privacy laws. The revisions include that the district will comply with all applicable state and federal laws related to record maintenance and retention and disclosure. So I want to point out previously that the board policy had said that the retention for the video surveillance that we have is 14 days. According to the Washington State records retention log, we will need to have a 30-day change. So we have the capacity to be able to do that, and it will be implemented as soon as this policy is adopted. And then there's also clarification on allowable placement of cameras and appropriate use of the footage. Any questions? No.
Any questions? Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you for your time tonight. You'll see a slew of policies next month.
Thank you. So just as a reminder, all of the first reads will show up in consent agenda next month, and then we might see some new ones. Nikki says she's continuing to work through them, so thank you so much. Any questions? Great. All right, so we have the consent agenda. Just want to elevate or highlight that there are travel approvals for outdoor education for students at Mountain School and Cedar School for Island View and Fidalgo. Mount Airy is going to attend in the spring, so we'll see that one later this year on the agenda, but just want to thank the Anacortes Schools Foundation, who continues to support outdoor education for all fifth graders across the district. It's a really important experience that all fifth graders get to have with thanks to their support. So anything else, comments about the consent agenda or questions before we?
Also, just another thank you to call out is our SABA for supporting cheerleading camp and many other things that they help provide and support for all of our many amazing community organizations, but I want to call that out too.
Thank you, Diana. All right. If there's no other questions or comments, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda items A through N.
Thank you, Jack. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Diana. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. That passed. So for our board calendar, we are back. Not only are the teachers and students back, but so is the school board. So we will have our first, oh no, my thing just, there we go. We will have our first study session and business meeting of the year on September 25th, our first site visit to Fidalgo Elementary on October 2nd, and then our October study session and business meeting will be on the 23rd. And with that, I'm going to adjourn our meeting.